welcome back, fans, to our YouTube channel. Right, it's Patriots of the American Republic, and I'm here with Saul, and we're going to bring to you a really good segment, and we're going to get into the basics of each party and their base. Saul, go ahead and kick us off and introduce yourself.
Yes, hello, fellow Patriots of the American Republic. It's a pleasure being with you here, Carlos, and with everybody else. We're going to have a great segment. My name is Saul Jose, and we're going to talk about the main differences of both the Republican Party and the Democrat Party.
Absolutely. Now, what we're going to be doing is we're going to go over the base of what each party it ideally stands for, right? We're not talking about radicals and extremes and moderates, right? We're going to go to the core base of what each side stands for. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get into it. What I'm actually going to do is I'm going to share my screen and we can go over the charts that we have here.
Let's do it.
All right. Are you able to see my screen?
Yes.
All right, perfect. I'm going to zoom in a little bit closer for you. All right, so let's go ahead and start at the very top, right? Democrats at this juncture, it's pretty undeniable that they are pro-choice, right? And I think pro-choice is very interesting words because it doesn't sound as bad. It just sounds like, okay, you have the right to choose, right? But what they're not showing you is what is involved in that choice. And what pro-choice means is abortion. And we've seen Democrats really stand for abortion at any given point, at any time, for any reason.
Most definitely, Carlos. It's despicable how some Democrats in power continue to push the abortion agenda, or as I call it in my personal verbiage, murder, just plain and simple murder of babies. That's what abortion is. This is absolutely unbelievable how they want to try to pass every law to protect abortion at any time. And you have had governors and mayors even saying that even after the baby is born, a decision or a conversation could be considered between the baby's mother and the doctor about possibly terminating or killing this baby. So they're absolutely out of control, Carlos, and audience. It's very sad to see where the Democrat Party is at this moment when it comes to abortion. Very sad.
Yeah, as a matter of fact, I think it was the former lieutenant governor of Virginia, either Virginia or West Virginia, who was talking about infanticide, and on a radio interview, he went into details to explain what he meant by that, and he quoted, and we'll see if we can play the video in between. But he was talking about how after the mother gave birth, they would make her comfortable, they would make the baby comfortable, and then they would see if the mother wanted to keep the baby or abort it, which at that point it's a live baby. The old excuse that it's just a clump of cells really just doesn't fit in that scenario. It doesn't fit within the womb, but even less when it's outside of the womb. That's murder.
If a mother is in labor, I can tell you exactly what would happen. The infant would be delivered. The infant would be kept comfortable. The infant would be resuscitated if that's what the mother and the family desired. And then a discussion would ensue between the physicians and the mother. So I think this was really blown out of proportion.
We're talking about fourth trimester abortion, or what anyone in the normal world calls infanticide. That's what we're talking about.
Exactly, yeah. They try to paint it as as a decision for aborted, even though the baby is out of the womb. At that moment, anybody with with a brain knows that that's obviously murder. So it's absolutely sad, Carlos, and audience, and absolutely terrible, horrifying what the Democrats are pushing.
Yeah, absolutely. And the interesting part is, again, the arguments that we hear from the left regarding abortion is that again, it's a clump of cells, my body, my choice. It doesn't feel pain. They've dehumanized the baby to just be a fetus. And even though that might be the scientific term, but even by science, not political science, but science, life, it's human life, right? And it starts at conception. And so what these people have done is they tried to dehumanize the baby to make it not a baby, and therefore justify the killing of that baby.
Most certainly, Carlos. I mean, you hit it right on the nail. It's absolutely despicable to see how they they change the verbiage and they try to make it sound one way when it's really a plain reality. It's a killing of babies. I mean, it's absolutely disheartening. And I'm not sure how some of the audience in the Democrat side can support this absolutely disgusting and barbaric process. If you guys think about it, an abortion, how barbaric is that? Not only pain and suffering from the baby that they're killing, but also the mother herself. I mean, going through a process that might leave her prone to not even be eligible to have kids in the future because of all the barbaric process that's going on down there. Going back to a point that you mentioned, they say my body, my choice, I guess only when it comes to abortion, only when it fits their agenda. However, when it comes to the draconian COVID-19, the vaccine, then they definitely want to go ahead and exclude the my body, my choice. It should be, I guess, applicable to every moment. I guess not. It just showcases the hypocrisy of the left and the radical Marxist Democrats.
Yes, that's very true. Now, on the Republican side, we're pro-life, right? We believe that life starts at conception. We understand that is a life and it has a right to live. Yes, you have your choice as a person of choice, but then by killing the baby, you're taking away the baby's choice to live. And how many times have we seen someone who was, on the point of being aborted, right? Somehow some miracle happened where they're alive and they're thankful they're alive. They're thankful that they weren't aborted, right? And I find it interesting how all of these people that are pro-choice were given the gift of life. Could you imagine if their parents had been pro-choicers and wanted it, they wouldn't have the ability to be pro-choice. So it's hypocritical and honestly a double standard in my opinion.
Oh, most definitely, Carlos. And at some point, audience, we're going to dive in more in depth when it comes to this topic of abortion. Obviously, it's a very profound and dividing topic, but we definitely try to share our views and our opinions from the Republican side of the equation, from the conservative side of the equation, from a very patriotic and God side of things. So, at the end of the day, some of those people that practice abortion and they want to say, no, it's my body. They're so illogical and erroneous because if you think about it, that's another body that's developing in them. And that body is voiceless. That body also has human rights. So it's imperative to get the word out there that abortion is murder. And if you guys think about it, again, we're going to dive into this topic further, more in depth. But at the end of the day, some of these radical Marxists left, they're doing abortion not because of necessity, just as a simple sacrifice, a sacrifice of babies, because some of them, I'm not saying everybody, but most of them are in this demonic, satanic cult where they even say it. We'll pull videos when we do that other segment that they're doing this for satanic purposes. It's absolutely disheartening, very scary. I know some of you might not share this view or might think that this is outrageous, but when you hear them on video, you will find out for yourself.
Well, and one of the things that I guess the excuses that they give is, in the case of rape or incest or something of that nature where a violation what took place. But to be quite honest, when you look at the numbers spread across, that is less than 1% of the time, right? So they're using that less than 1%, to justify all the other ones that are willy-nilly, just because it's not convenient, it was a mistake,
correct,
whatever the case may be,
protection, etc.
Correct. So
complete irresponsibility.
So those are the two positions between Democrats and Republicans as far as pro-life and pro-choice. Let's move on to the next topic, which is for the Democrats, and they ran on this campaign, which, to be quite honest with you, anybody told me this or would have said this or suggested this maybe 15 years ago, I would have laughed in their face. Defunding the police. They want less police. Less police, common sense, is going to lead to higher crimes. But that's what they actually campaigned on in the last two, campaign trails.
And certainly, Carlos, it's absolutely crazy how the radical Marxist left, the ones in power, and some of its supporters, they went with this defund the police agenda, and let's try to defund every police department in every city, in every county, in every state. Absolutely crazy. This, as I'm sure the audience knows, developed from the George Floyd situation, where their excuse was, "Hey, let's defund the police because they're killing, Americans." Even though, and again, we'll dive into this topic on another segment. It's clearly known that what killed George Floyd was the actual fentanyl in his system that was rampant because of his drug addiction. But again, the media doesn't talk about that because it doesn't fit their fake narrative that all white cops are assaulting and harassing African Americans or Latinos. But again, it's absolutely crazy how from this event they have rolled out the initiative in all these leftist major cities like New York, Chicago, California, or how I call it, California, that they want to defund the police. And as a result of that, everyone knows that the criminality rate in those cities and states, it has gone up through the roof. So they have actually defunded a lot of the departments, and we'll put this resource back up for the audience. But I read about 2 weeks ago, or a week and a half ago, that the New York City Police Department, the famous New York City, the Blue of New York, they were defunded by the radical mayor there $1 billion, and it shows in the criminality increase in New York City.
Yep.
Absolutely insane.
That was done by former Mayor Bill de Blasio. And to your point, in every major or almost every major city that's run by Democrats, crime has increased dramatically since the defunding of that, since they've rolled back on policing and boots on the ground and so on and so forth, right? And so, I mean, that's just common sense. You take away cops, criminals are going to be emboldened. They're going to commit more crimes because there's nobody there to watch them. So, I mean, that's just common sense. Now, if you want to get into the attributes or the talking points of this and that, well, then more funding, more education, more training. That's a conversation that we can have. But to defund the police is absolutely insane. And one more thing I want to add. This whole narrative of white cops and so on and so forth being racist is absolutely absurd. When you look at the numbers, when you look at the data, it's just a false narrative that the media has been playing since I was a teenager, and maybe even before that. I noticed that back in the 90s when it was a white cop against anybody else, somehow skin color mattered in the way that they were reporting, whether it was the article or the news reporter. But when the races were not against white people, then it didn't matter. Then it was police officer and suspect. Race was never an issue. So the media purposely does this to trigger emotions, and that is another segment that we'll touch on.
Most definitely, Carlos. It's absolutely incredible how the media will deceive. The rigged media. We all know that they're the enemy of the people. Some of the major news out there. They will purposely say, if it's a white person or a white cop, they will literally say white cop or white man assaulted, whatever. But when it's an African American, they don't say like that. They just say man attacked, for example, woman or police. It's absolutely despicable, and it's actually pretty interesting how some of our friends in the lab, they don't see that when it's so clear. But when it comes to the Republicans, as you know, Carlos, we back the blue.
Yes.
The Republican Party, the Liberty Party, the America First Party, the MAGA people, we're the ones that back up the blue. We're always there for them. We support them. We want an increase, actually. We want funding for the police. We want a bigger, safer police department in every city. We want them well-trained. Yes, we acknowledge that there are opportunities for growth and improvement when it comes to some cops. Not every cop's bad.
Yep.
Definitely, there's always going to be a bad apple here and there from every race, color, and creed. He might be white, he might be Latino, he might be African-American, or she, obviously. So we back the blue always, and hopefully some of these police officers that continue going along these draconian and illegal mandates in Democrat cities can set a line between those erroneous mandates by Democrats and put a line in the sand.
Well, yeah, you're right. We do back the blue. Why? Because number one, I was taught as a child to respect law enforcement, right? That's number one. Policemen were there for our protection, right? And we're going to talk about police in general. We're not going to talk about like the 1% bad apples, because there's bad apples everywhere that you go, right? We're talking about
every industry.
The foundation of the police department. Their job is to serve and protect us. Guess what? When somebody breaks into our home or there's an emergency, the first person that we're calling are cops. The first people that went into the Twin Towers that got hit on 9/11 were cops. They weren't football players. They weren't actors. They weren't, media people. They weren't Hollywood elitists. They were police officers and firemen. So they deserve respect, because when the crap hits the fan, they're the first ones in there. And again, there's always exceptions to every rule. We're talking about the foundation of what law enforcement is.
Most definitely, Carlos. I mean, you hit it right on the nail. I don't see Colin Kaepernick going to any emergencies anytime soon, or whenever there's a shooting, in black on black crime shootings in Chicago, which the media doesn't report. I don't see Colin Kaepernick going in there to help out the situation. So it just shows the hypocrisy. And again, the media, how they have this false narrative about defunding the police, but they're the first ones to call the police when something doesn't go their way. Very hypocritical, in my opinion.
That's right. And it's interesting that this whole movement against cops started. It really just shocked me, because like I felt really bad for cops. It's like you know they put their lives on the line every single night. They don't know if they're going to make it back. They have to treat every suspect as a potential suspect that's going to shoot them and kill them and take their lives away, right? They deserve the respect. And so when you see this defund the police movement from our political leaders, from people who have a voice, they must feel demoralized. They must feel like, what am I doing? Why am I putting my life on the line if I'm going to be accused of automatically being a racist because of my skin color or whatever the case may be? And a lot of them quit or retired early. As a matter of fact, I think it was like a couple of days ago in North Carolina, an entire city police department supposedly just upped and quit because they couldn't take it anymore.
Oh, definitely. I read that same article, Carlos, and it seems like a lot of the wokeness of that city and the radical ideas and the fact that those Democrats in power do not support that particular policeman, it just resulted in all of them quitting and leaving the city pretty much in a way that crime could potentially increase, unfortunately. Very sad, very sad.
Yep, it is. And then that leads us to our next section, which would be gun control, and I put gun confiscation because, to be quite honest with you, a lot of Democratic leaders were talking about gun confiscation at some point, whether it be a certain type of weapon like an AR-15 or not. But gun confiscation is not a good thing, because you start to confiscate certain people's guns, what stops you from confiscating the other guns? And as a matter of fact, there's more deaths by handguns than AR-15 from what I understand.
You're completely accurate when it comes to that. There are more incidents when it comes to handguns than actually AR-15s, which is another false narrative by the rigged media, Carlos and audience, because they just want to go after the AR-15s, knowing that that is a weapon that truly threatens their power.
Yes.
That truly threatens their authority and basically their communism, socialism, and authoritarianism that they're coming for. So yeah, it just shows that they're pushing for gun control. But if it were up to them, they would do gun confiscation, that would be a terrible idea. Let me tell you, if the Democrats in power come for our guns, 1776 will commence again. There are over 325 million gun owners, law-obeying citizens, gun owners in this country. And trust me, if gun confiscations begin, this is not a threat, but it is a reality. That will not go. That will probably be worse than any events or shooting events that unfortunately have happened in the past. Not a good idea for the left to push that.
Well, here's the interesting part. They talk about saving lives, and we just said that how handguns kill more lives. But the reality is that they change words. They change words around in order for them to get their agenda out. They talk about gun control, but they want to get rid of certain types of guns. Why? Listen, I don't trust any government. I don't trust our government. I don't trust any government. Saul, from personal experience, because you came from Venezuela, as we mentioned in our first episode, Venezuela took away the guns of its citizens, correct?
That is correct, Carlos, and audience. Chavez, as soon as he took power, just a few years into his regime, he took the guns away. Any government that has bad intentions, like the Chavez government, which is a socialist government that turned into communism and pushes the boundaries for totalitarianism, governments like that, they wanna get the guns away.
Yep.
They know that the freedom of the people and the right of the people to lawfully own guns, that threatens their power.
Yep.
So the first thing that they're gonna go after is guns.
Yep.
So it just shows you why are they so desperate to go after guns. It's not about the deceitful agenda that they tell you, oh, it's because of school shootings and everything. When that it's only a very tiny portion, a very tiny percentage of the incidents that happen around the nation, unfortunately. And yeah, those shootings have been terrible. But again, it doesn't define or showcase every lawful gun owner that has a gun.
But not only that, I mean, realistically, if you really were concerned about schools, let's say school shootings, defend it better. Build up fences so there's only one way in, one way out. Put people at the door so that whoever comes in through the door has to get recognized by some type of security measure or something like that. You know, it's interesting how Congress and the Senate, they have armed bodyguards and so on and so forth. And when they feel threatened, they fence off the entire Capitol building. But our children can't have that same protection. No, let's take away people's guns and their lawful. Again, it's such a false narrative. And if we really want to get to the root of gun issues, it's not the gun itself, because guns have been around for centuries. And I grew up here. I was born here. I don't remember having to deal with gun issues at school unless you were in some major crime-filled area like in New York City back in the 80s, right? And it wasn't a school shooting that you had to worry about. It was more so, you know, getting jumped by a bunch of kids, maybe a blade or something like that. But this really started to become an epidemic, if you will, after the Columbine shooting, right? So guns is really not the root issue here. I think the root issue is mental illness, and we can see that all around us in today's society, to be quite honest with you.
Mental illness, it's one of the major factors, Carlos, that that affects into that situation. And just everything in society, the video games to some extent, just the trends in society. That this is another topic that we could go in depth, and we will at some point, audience. So excellent examples,
yep.
Carlos. So this leads us to, obviously, on the Republican side, we are pro-gun rights all the way. It is imperative that we protect the Second Amendment, which is the right to bear arms. We as gun owners, as lawful, law-abiding citizens, taxpayers, we are responsible gun owners, and that constitutional right, should not be taken away by any means. Any government that threatens the Second Amendment, they do not have good intentions. Everybody that reads a history book should know that, or do a quick research on Google or Bing. You guys should know that.
As long as you're not a criminal, like you have a criminal history, right, and or like a history of mental disorder, because again, we're talking about that. You're right. No one's right should be infringed upon. If there's no cause, there really should not be. So we are for pro guns. We are for all of our constitutional rights, which seem to be dwindling down or attempting to be dwindled down by the Democrats as they continue to grasp for power. But moving on to the next section is open borders. Obviously, there's an open borders crisis, regardless of whether the White House wanted to admit it or not, and they finally did this year, that the borders are wide open. We've got an influx of illegal immigrants coming in from everywhere, predominantly, obviously, Central and South America, but some illegal immigrants have been coming in from the Middle East, from Asia, different areas of the Caribbean. So there's a steady flow of illegal immigration happening right now, and it's putting a lot of pressure on the system, putting a lot of pressure on Border Patrol. Obviously, the wall was not finished thanks to Joe Biden, and now we've got to deal with this huge mess that they created themselves, because on the campaign trail, remember, Biden said, come on in.
Sure, Carlos. They're definitely doing it on purpose, in my opinion. I mean, this is a premeditated situation that they have created themselves to try to provide a solution. But if you think about it, President Donald Trump and his great presidency, he tried to get the ball rolling on building the wall. And there were several hundreds of miles that were completed, even that the Democrats at that moment didn't allow him to do all the entire wall or to do the whole process quicker because they were tying his hands. But interestingly enough, back in the day, Barack Obama, we got Chuck Schumer, Pelosi, Bill Clinton, they're all literally on video saying that we needed a wall, that we needed protection at the border. Even Barack Hussein Obama said that every illegal alien should go back to the end of the line and do the process accordingly. Yep. So it's an absolute disaster what they have going on right now at the border. And even Vice President Kamala Harris, she hasn't even shown up at the border. And what are they into what, a year and a half into the presidency?
Yep.
I mean, it's absolutely disgusting. She's been all over the world and everywhere else, but not where she's needed the most.
I think she went.
They obviously don't care, Carlos.
I think she went to Guatemala and met with the president over there or something like that, some Central American country, and kind of did this phony don't come type of thing. But we know that we know that, number one, they're not applying the laws that they need to. We know that because all these immigrants are coming in. It's a catch and release, or they're tying Border Patrol's hands, or they're creating loopholes and so on and so forth to get these illegal immigrants to come. Why? Because especially for Hispanic illegal immigrants, what we tend to do, and I'm just saying we in general, right? Not that me or you are illegal, but what we tend to do as Hispanics is we tend to vote Democrat because we're sold the lie that Republicans are for white people and Republicans are racist, and that's such a false narrative. And so that's why they want open borders, because they're basically bringing in their new voters.
Definitely, they're bringing in new votes, Carlos, and audience. They know that their false narrative is falling apart. So that's the only way. The only way for them is to tackle and say, hey, no, this is a humanitarian effort. We got to let everybody in, which is such BS, in my opinion, because if you look at right now, the mayor of Washington, D.C., she's getting all of the migrants or the illegal aliens, how they should be called, they're getting bused to Washington, D.C. Oh, guess what? It's putting a strain on her city. And also the new mayor of New York City, he's also commenting that this is not a good idea, that they need help from the federal government. So their own policies are shooting themselves, quote unquote, in the foot. So now all of a sudden they don't want migrants, they don't want illegal aliens. Oh, guess what? It's the same Democrat policies, failed policies, that are allowing this to happen. So I'm kind of happy to listen to those mayors at least revert back on the rhetoric, but it just shows you the hypocrisy, Carlos, and audience.
But the reason why is because now it's affecting them, right? They're not on the border, so they don't see the impact that it has. Mostly, I think red states are border states, and so that's why they're for border protection. They're against illegal immigration because they feel it directly, all the negative impacts. And so these Democrats, they don't really feel it because the illegal immigrants don't end up in their area for the most part. And so now that Governor Abbott is strategically busing them over there, now they're feeling the pinch. Now they're like, oh no, we can't sustain this. This isn't right. Well, we've been trying to tell you that it's common sense. No country should have an influx of illegal immigration from anywhere. It's just bad policy to have that. It's unsustainable.
Right on. And that's why Republicans are for legal migration. We believe in the fact that, yeah, we'll welcome you when you got to get back in the back of the line. We'll welcome you if you're going to add value to the country. If you're a good working person, if you have good intentions, if you don't have any criminal record from where you're coming from, those are the things that we look for. Somebody that will abide to the North American culture, that will respect the flag, the anthem. Someone that already speaks English or at least wants to learn English and become a U.S. citizen in a naturalized process where you learn the laws, where you learn the different things that define us as the greatest land of freedom in the world. So
Amen.
Again, Republicans are for legal migration,
Yes.
not for illegal immigration.
Correct. Which, moving on, Democrats believe in weak military. They're going to tell you that they don't, but what you say and what you do are completely different things, right? Because we saw how in the Obama administration, our military was greatly weakened, right? And so much so that Trump had to rebuild it. And in rebuilding it, he rebuilt the respect that we had on a worldwide stage. And now here we are back to Biden. And what they're worried about is more about gender affirmation or gender identity and so on and so forth, which is garbage, right? In military, you should be focused on winning wars, studying battles, looking at your opponents, your strategic enemies, and how do you combat them should they get bold enough to attack you. Right now, China is increasing. They're like this huge dragon that's getting ready to attack. And their army, their military is focused on winning battles and being strong, while ours is trying to worry about identity politics. What is that about?
It's absolutely disgusting, Carlos, and audience, how this Marxist radical Democrat left, they have weakened the military. As you mentioned, they're focusing on the pronouns, on him, she or her, him and his. I mean, it's absolutely out of control. They and them. The military of the United States of America, unfortunately, has become woke, including high generals like General Milley, who, in my opinion, is a traitor and should be behind bars for disobeying the orders of President Trump and going around him. But again, that is another subject. General Milley, again, has focused more on the critical race theory and that white men are the greatest threat to our democracy when we have powerhouses like China, Russia, India, pretty much strengthening themselves and, getting a tougher military, regime over there. The U.S. military has become so weakened under the radical Marxist left that they have even diminished the physical fitness requirements to join the military because they want to give everybody a shot, no matter how in shape or not in shape you are. It's absolutely disgusting.
It absolutely is. And so it's interesting because obviously Republicans are for a strong military. We understand that America has a lot of enemies, right? When you're at the top, you're always going to have haters. But not only that, people hate what we represent. People hate what we stand for. We represent freedom. People hate that. Why? Because they want to control things, right? China's a communistic country. They don't want freedom. I believe it was last year that Hong Kong was having protests and they were waving our flag. Venezuela's had protests waving our flag. Cuba has had protests waving our flag. Our country is a symbol for freedom and strength. And so by that means, the people that hate us, they want to tear it down because they don't want people to have freedom. They want to have absolute control of people.
Correct. It's all about social control. So that's why they're weakening the military on purpose, Carlos. One of the reasons that they're also trying to wash out the patriots in the military by the draconian mandate of the COVID-19 vax, which, again, they were making soldiers taking about mandates, and many of them that didn't want it, they didn't want the Nazi shot, they went ahead and left the military. So, they're weakening them in every facet, culturally, physically, medically. Again, it's absolutely disheartening what's happening. Instead of showing them the right military way about strategy, strength, force, approaches. Again, they're just showing them about wokeness. And, once anything goes woke, it goes broke. We all know that.
Yep. Interesting when you mentioned General Milley. Isn't it interesting how all white people are racist? Unless you're a Democrat, then all white people are not racist, right?
Correct. Yeah, it's absolutely so hypocritical how they,
So funny.
some of them actually Caucasian, Democrats in power, like General Milley. Yeah, they're easy to say, yeah, white men are racist, even though he's a white man. But again, he's not, quote unquote, because he's in the Democrat, Marxist, radical left party.
Yep.